We're talking today with Bob Leibecke of Dayton, Ohio, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Bob, can you start us off with some background on yourself? To begin with, where and when were you born?
Born in Cincinnati, Ohio. My father was World War II vet. We lived there briefly when I was very young. He was recalled to active duty for the Korean War, and from that point forward he went back in and stayed back in after having served in World War II. So while born in Cincinnati, I never really spent any time there, so it was a series of military posts and then overseas assignments for my father.
Where did you wind up doing high school?
All over the place. In Paris, France, and Prince George County, Virginia are the two places I went to high school.
Okay, and when you were in Paris, were you in an American school?
Yes, it was run for the Department of Defense.
Okay. And what year did you graduate from high school then?
1965.
Okay, and then upon graduation, what did you do?
Well, I had applied to the Citadel and VMI, and VMI was my first choice. I was accepted there, so I entered VMI in 1965 and graduated in May of 1969. Degree in history.
All right, well, very good. Now, talk a little bit about what kind of sort of military training were you getting at VMI, or how was that worked into your curriculum?
Well, in those days, VMI was considered a branch material school, so it was Army ROTC, although you had a choice of Air Force and Marine Corps in those days. My chosen branch was armor, and I thought I was going to be assigned to armor, and we trained in armor. When I say branch material, we actually trained in that particular branch, so we had tanks and stuff like that. The commissioning in those days was mandatory, so I believe 95% of my class was commissioned. Today that's not true, but we were commissioned, and I believe about 70% of my class ended up in Vietnam at some point. The military life, well, it's a military college, but the actual U.S. Army part of it was very much integrated into barracks life. The ROTC instructors, which were regular Army and Air Force, were part of the tactical staff within the barracks. So there was one of my historian roommates reflected it in those days. It operated very much like a service academy because everything was fused together. Mm-hmm. Not so much the case today because people don't have to serve in the military after that. But
so did you have kind of the sort of the tightly regulated daily schedule in the manner that you would have in a service academy in terms of like when you get up and what you...
No difference.
Yeah.
No difference. I mean, uniforms, regulation, can't wear civilian clothes. I mean, it was really like being in the Army.
Right. What sort of backgrounds did the other students bring with them? I mean, what proportion of them were Army brats or...
There was a pretty good number of them. I would say maybe half the people there were from Virginia, but half were from other states. And then you did find a pretty good proportion of people that were acquainted in one way or the other through the military.
All right. And was it relatively easy for you to adjust to that militarized life because, you know, that's the world that you lived in?
No. VMI is a very tough, harsh environment, as would be any service academy or the Citadel. You can't say because my father was in the military, it's going to make it any easier for me. I don't know how to describe the experience. Either you get it or you don't, and there's nothing that really prepares you for that.
And there's no mom at VMI?
No.
All right. Now, this is probably kind of an interesting time to be in what is essentially a service academy. 65 to 69, I mean, that's Vietnam. Yes. Ramps up significantly, you get the Tet Offensive, you get a growing anti-war movement going on in the country, all of this sort of stuff. What level of awareness did you have of what was going on with Vietnam or responses to Vietnam in those years? Oh,
there's a high awareness of Vietnam, not such a high awareness of what went on in the rest of the country because VMI is its own community. We're within our own post compound.
And it was not going to be a home for anti-war protest or things like that?
No, not at all.
Not that group, yeah. So did you have people who would come in to VMI, people who served in Vietnam, who were telling stories about what it was like, or was any of
Oh,
it?
absolutely. Well, the tactical staff there they had all been in Vietnam. Alumni would come back and talk to us and say, man, I was with the 82nd and whatever. You know, I mean, we got some stories, you know, and then through ROTC, and of course it was being taught, you know, how to survive, and it was integrated into, you know, military science is the topic in that. So.
All right. And so as you're going through, are you pretty much fully expecting that you'll wind up in Vietnam?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, I made sure it happened.
Okay. So you were determined, so you actually wanted to go?
Yeah, because at the very end, before you graduate, you sign what's called a dream sheet for your assignments. It was so simple. I just wrote down RVN. That's all I had to do.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Didn't even have to spell it out.
And what, I don't know, I guess what motivated, why did you want to go there?
I don't know. Sense of adventure, perhaps. Don't know.
Well, I guess if there was a job to be done for the Army, it was primarily there.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
Okay, so you graduate in '69.
Mhm.
What happens to you then?
Let's see, May, I forget the exact date in May, but mid-May, I'm going to say. Week later, I'm at Fort Benning, signing into the Officer Infantry Basic course. And then while I'm there, they say, well, you want to sign up for Airborne School and Ranger School? Oh, yeah, sure. So I spent the first part of most of the summer in Infantry Officer Basic. Thereupon, signed up for Airborne School. And then, and then when it came up for my Ranger class assignment, that wasn't going to be until February, the following February. Now this is like August, I'm finishing up Airborne School. And so I ended up going to Fort Ord, California. What I thought I was going to an infantry battalion at Fort Ord, got out there and they just do whatever they want to, even though I was an infantry officer. They said, oh, well, you're eventually going to be in the transportation corps. Here, go over in this truck company out in the middle of nowhere, which was at Camp, where was it? Hunter Liggett Military Reservation, which is in the middle of nowhere. So I ended up spending a couple of months in a truck company. You're supposed to be doing platoon work. You're supposed to be working with troops to get ready to go overseas. So that was their idea. It was working with troops, but it wasn't infantry. But.
Right. To back up a little bit, what sort of curriculum do they have for your officer school? I mean, the first school you go to.
Well, it's all basic infantry tactics. Defense, familiarization with a number of different weapons, a lot of map reading. Basic soldiering skills. Now, we already had that because we were already from ROTC, but they're just taking it a step further,
Okay. And are you being now trained by people who have been to Vietnam and come back? Or?
I would say just about, yeah. Really, yeah.
All right. And were you learning things that you hadn't learned at the previous level in terms of things that might be useful later?
Yes and no. I mean, some of it was repetitive,
Okay. All right. And then with jump school, how do they run that?
That's 3 weeks. Physical conditioning, jumping out of a 34-foot tower. Eventually you get these big high towers where they pull you up 250 feet up. I think they call it a 250-foot tower, and then they would release the parachute, and then eventually you go load up on an airplane and go jump.
Mm-hmm. And did they do, at this point, were they doing anything with helicopters or just airplanes?
That was just airplanes.
Okay. All right. So you've done that. You've done the infantry training. You go to the truck unit.
Yeah.
Now, was that just a temporary layover? Or
Yeah, I think in the wisdom of the Army in those days, they wanted you to serve in a troop unit before going to Vietnam. You were supposed to do that. A buddy of mine now in Dayton that owns a place, he was a little ahead of me. They sent him to the 82nd Airborne. I said, hey, man, that's great. You actually got to go with an airborne unit before you went, because we were both in the 101st. He said, oh, man, they put me on courts and boards. They gave him a staff job, before he was supposed to go lead troops. You just don't know what the Army's going to do.
Okay, but you knew at this point you were going to the 101st?
No,
Okay.
You don't find that out till you get in country.
All right. Now, is there a point where, I mean, you said you sort of wish list for sort of where you would go. Are you also able to try to pick what unit you get assigned to, or are you given any options?
You mean as far as getting in the 101st?
Yeah.
No, no. In fact, there's a picture of a guy in a Ripcord book. His name is Smith. He was not in my battalion. He and I came in country together, and we were down at Benoit waiting for our orders. And you just lounged around there for a couple of days, and then there was this big bulletin board, and they would put the orders up. And Smith came running in the door and says, "Okay, guys, saddle up. We're going to the 101st." And I think there was kind of a groan. Now, these were officers that were billeted together. Yeah, Smith's in his pictures in the book there.
So why was there a groan for the 101st, or was it just a groan for everybody?
Because
anywhere?
of Hamburger Hill, and there'd been, I guess we've been reading the press reports and stuff that there was, 101st was kind of where the action was. Well, bear in mind, the CAV, we came in at 1st of May. The CAV was in Cambodia on that incursion, so there was a whole lot of stuff go on there. But I think we were seeing that the casualties were coming out of the 101st. I mean, there was maybe a lot of shock and awe going on in Cambodia, but there was we knew that there was some nasty stuff going on in the 101st, so, which turned out to be true.
Okay, so you are kind of learning bit by bit more and more about what is going on in Vietnam and the different parts.
Yeah.
To back up a little bit again, so how long did you spend with the truck unit?
I was there through the end of 1969. And then I packed up and headed back to Fort Benning to go to Ranger School. And was in Ranger School from, I think, around the 1st of February through the end of April. Graduated from Ranger School, went back to Virginia, packed, unpacked, drove back down to Charleston Air Force Base, got on a plane, went down to Panama for 2 weeks of jungle school, came back, packed, unpacked, and then went to Washington, caught a flight to the West Coast to head on out to, to Vietnam.
All right. How does Ranger School compare with the other schools you've been to thus far?
Ranger School's bad. I mean, that is tough. It's just, there's no sleep. It's just one constant. There's a certain amount of schooling, but it becomes one continuous patrol where you never stop. I mean, you don't get any sleep. There's 3 phases. There's 3 weeks of Fort Benning, 3 weeks in the mountains in Georgia, and then 3 weeks in the swamps in Florida. And Florida was probably the worst. I mean, you're in swamps all the time. We're supposed to do 3 jumps down there, but I only got to do 2 because our mountain jump was canceled because of high winds.
Right. Was Florida ultimately good preparation for Vietnam, or was it not for your part of Vietnam?
Well, Florida's not a jungle, and it was still pretty chilly. We were winter rangers,
Okay.
so it was pretty cool down there.
Yeah. All right. Now, what proportion of the people who start Ranger School finish it?
I don't know. I saw a recent movie, and they showed all these people getting washed out. I mean, I'm not sure. A lot.
Okay.
A lot. I mean, they get a lot of people right in the beginning where you got to be able to swim. I mean, you're in water, and they throw you. You walk off the diving board with full pack of gear into a swimming pool blindfolded, and that panics people. Just to walk. Like walking the plank on a pirate ship, full gear and all that. But at VMI, I had been drown proofed. You can't even in those days. You could not graduate from VMI unless you passed rat swimming, and that was just one of the most brutal swimming classes. I mean, they made sure that, and so in Ranger School, walking off, I just walked off, plopped into the water, swam over to the side. I was like being back at VMI again.
Okay. Now, when you do that, do you keep your pack and your gear when you're swimming, or do you?
Yeah, because the idea is you sink to the bottom, but I didn't sink. I mean, I went down a little ways, popped up, and just started swimming sideways. I knew how to hit the side of the pool sometime. So VMI was great for getting me ready for swimming. And you didn't graduate. I mean, there was first-classmen at VMI still struggling to try to get through rat swimming. That's the first year you're there. So.
All right. Now, how physically did they get you out to Vietnam? You're shipped out to California. You fly out of there.
I fattened up in California. It was a cushy job. So I started running. I thought, man, you better start getting in shape for Ranger School. I was porked up a little bit.
Right,
but I remember looking at myself. We got back from the mountains, and you only get 1 ration a day in Ranger School. Except in the winter in the mountains, they let you have 2. because you're burning up all this energy. And I looked at my stomach was gone. Whatever fat I'd gained in California was gone.
All right. Okay, but then from Ranger School, now, do you get any leave time before they ship you out to Vietnam, or do you go straight
In
out?
this particular, some people maybe, but in my case, no. Everything just hit end of Ranger School, 2 weeks in Panama, off to
Right.
Vietnam. It's just bang, bang,
Okay.
bang.
And what was the Panama experience like?
Oh, that was kind of worthless. I mean, I had a really bad attitude in Panama. I just come out of Ranger School, and I had not even asked. I don't know if I had asked for this school or not. The only good thing about it, it took 2 weeks off your tour in Vietnam. It dropped it. They counted when you started in Panama. It was like starting in Vietnam. So
you were overseas at that point.
yeah, I mean, just to come back to the States and
Right.
basically change planes is
Mhm.
about what it amounted to.
Right.
But Panama, I mean, it was just more of the same thing, only in the jungle. And I thought, God, how many more map reading courses am I going to go on? So,
And did the jungle bear any resemblance to what you ran in Vietnam?
yeah, pretty much. The usual nasty animals out there. Yeah, jungle's jungle. Yeah.
Okay. So on some level, it might have had some value, or was most of it
Probably,
stuff?
probably acclimatization, getting used to hot weather. Yeah, that part of it would have been.
Yeah, but because you've had Ranger School, the rest, because would they do things like just dump you in the middle of the jungle and say, get out, find your way out?
Nah, it was a lot of classroom. The final thing was some big map reading course, or at night.
Yeah.
And I just, one more map
Yeah,
course.
you've done that already. Okay, and then, so you go back to the States, put you on a plane, send you to Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Did you fly a commercial plane or a military one, or?
It was commercial. I mean, it was a charter
Right.
flight.
And what was the mood on the plane light going over?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I mean, I got a roommate that was a FAC, and he wrote a book about. He made a whole book out of just flying to Vietnam, and how he remembers everything is beyond me. Because the whole mood of the airplane, I'm thinking, I just remember being on it, and that's it.
All right. Where did you land in Vietnam?
I think it was Bien Hoa.
Okay. And what was your first impression of Vietnam when you got there?
Well, it was interesting because I mentioned the CAV being on the Cambodian incursion. The CAV's headquarters is right on the Air Force is on one side of the runway and the CAV's on the other side. We literally got off the airplane and there's guys right out of the boonies, with either Cambodian or North Vietnamese, and they got them there with with handcuffs behind them and stuff like that. And these guys are like right out of the jungle. And I'm thinking, boy, that's quite an experience to see this just stepping right off the airplane. But that's because the CAV's units were right there and they flew out of Bien Hoa.
All right. And what do they do with you once you land? They just park you someplace?
Well, again, bad memory, but you're stuck. It's in processing, like any military in process. You're in a barracks, and there you wait until the orders are posted. And that's, like I was mentioning the story, Smith, whose picture's in the book there, he was on my flight in the barracks there, and we were there a couple of days, and he finally said, hey, we got orders, we're going to the 101st. So that's, and the next thing you know, you're packing your stuff, getting on a C-130 and heading for Phu Bai.
All right. And then physically, where in Vietnam is Phu Bai? If someone's looking at a map, is it way north? Or?
Have you seen a map?
I have, but we're doing this in part for a broader audience.
Okay. Phu Bai is, I think it's in the northernmost province in South Vietnam is Quang Tri province. And then the second most northern province is, oh man, there I went. It'll come to me.
Okay. But is that
But
what
Phu Bai is right. Phu Bai is right next to Hue. So
Okay, yeah.
picture Hue on the old imperial city. There's the Quang Tri. It'll come to me. That province. I'll see a map. I got maps.
That's okay. That can be looked up. I mean, outside of
Yeah,
Way is
yeah,
good enough
yeah.
for.
Yeah, it's right outside Hue.
All right.
And that is the main landing field for the 101st. They had a runway to take C-130s, and
Okay.
that's where everybody in process.
All right. So you're in process there,
Yeah.
and then what do they do with you?
He sends you off to, I went to Camp Evans to Screaming Eagle Replacement Training Center, also known as CERTS. You heard that one? Okay. Week in CERTS, that was just a little vacation, get used to the jungle and all that. There was This is where my memory lets me down. I think I ended up with some people who were in my Ranger class, and we ended up, and they were showing us rappelling, and we're almost laughing at the rappelling, because then we were doing other types, Australian front-forward rappelling, which was, advanced techniques, but it was just more of the same stuff. I mean, they tried to give us a little bit of a sense of history of the 101st, did a miserable job of that. Because today I know so much more about the 101st. Had I realized the historic value of the unit I went to, and I just took it for granted. I had no idea who these guys were. And to know they're world famous today, 506 Infantry, but they just didn't do it very well. We were at Bastogne and all that. Okay, yeah, I know that, but big whoop,
Okay. So you get it. Now the class you were in, does that have it enlisted as well as officers together?
Yeah, it was everybody thrown in together.
And so you have some guys with really no exposure to this kind of training, and then other people who've had.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying the people I was with, especially us guys. I'm almost sure there were some guys from my Ranger class, so we were all there together. And for the life of me, I can't remember. If I could find Smith, I would say, "Were you in my Ranger class?" Because I'm not real sure, but I know he was there when we processed.
All right.
He ended up going to 1506, and I ended up going to 2506.
All right. So what was the specific assignment then that you got? What unit did you join?
Platoon leader, 1st Platoon in C Company, 2506.
Okay. And when did you actually join them?
Well, this gets hazy. I've gotten the dates screwed up. As near as I can tell, it must have been about mid-May of 70. Because I had a week, there was like 4 or 5 days of certs, and I think I remember ending Ranger School somewhere in April, and then you got your jungle. Everything just runs together, and I really kind of got the dates mixed up sometimes. But I would say about mid-May.
Okay. Now, what was the platoon in the field when you joined it?
Yeah. They put me in a loach, took me out in the middle of nowhere, and they said, "That's where you're going, pal." And there was this little bald knob, and it was an LZ blown on top of a mountain, and that was to insert me and have me take over the platoon. So I joined the company in the field.
Okay. Now, were you replacing someone who was de-roasting out, or was it someone who had been hit?
I am told I replaced Bob Wallace. I never knew this until I came to the Ripcord reunion last year, and I met Bob, and there was some joking. But he had apparently left before I got there, so there was a gap of time.
Okay.
But it was all under Captain Vasquez.
Right. Okay. So you're joining a company in the field. What kind of reception do you get once you land there, you get off the helicopter, now what?
I don't remember. I mean, I got put to work right away. I mean, I had a platoon sergeant, and I can't remember if the whole company was together at the time, but it wasn't long before I met Vasquez, and then he put my platoon on point to go. We had 2 platoons together in the company CP, maybe a 3rd platoon. I can't remember.
He liked to keep them separate, he says.
Huh?
He liked to keep his platoons separate.
Who, Vasquez?
Yes.
Did you talk to Vasquez?
Yes. Talk to him.
There was no. Yeah, you know what? We operated a lot separately, but I'm the new guy. So Vasquez is there, and he says, "Okay, I want you to take point." And that platoon's point. That means the platoon leader's running the map and the compass. And he says, "This is where we're going to go." So okay. And as time turned out, Vasquez was a fast mover. He liked to move really fast. Now I don't know whether I moved fast or slow, but we were heading for the point. He says, "Okay." We'd been moving for a better part of the day. He says, "Okay, I'm going to have the other platoon come up, take over." I thought, "Oh, okay." But they're experienced, they know what they're doing and all that. And within an hour, we were right at the point that I had, picked out. Because, we could see this hilltop, but once you start heading for there, you can't see anything but jungle. And we ended up right where we were supposed to be and all that. And I thought, okay, good, So Vasquez came over, and I don't know if he remembers this, although everybody says he has a phenomenal memory, and he says, you did good. That was okay. And then coming from Vasquez, I thought, okay, this, even though he may have thought maybe I was moving too slowly, or maybe wasn't sure that I was on the right track, but we did get to where he wanted us to be, and so I thought, okay, fine. And I truly regret, I only had 2 weeks with Vasquez before we had the stand down, and I could have learned so much from that man, but I'm thankful for the 2 weeks that I had before he was replaced.
Now, when he has you moving, were you going on trails or off of them?
Well, I can't say. I mean, we were on trails a lot,
Mhm.
and I've read the literature and thought about it. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you stay on a trail, you can get from point A to point B pretty quick. But if you do that, then you run the risk of ambushes. If you cut cross country, which we did, then it's going to take longer, or you might run into some stuff and it's machete time. If the area had been defoliated, things have grown up, and then you can't move at any speed at all. Vasquez liked to move fast.
Mhm. All right. Now, in those, how quickly did you get into contact with the enemy then, once you're out there?
I didn't see anything until there was the stand down. There was this again. My memory's terrible because have you interviewed Jim Campbell, the other platoon leader?
No, I would like to, but I haven't seen him yet.
Oh, you need to. He was the old hand. I mean, I looked up to that guy. He had been in country forever. I had first platoon, he had second platoon, and we did operate some together. And my platoon, we had operated together, and we're splitting up to go our separate ways because, as you pointed out, the norm was to operate in platoon strength, which is really pretty cool. I mean, that's being with the CP is kind of a drag, and then we walked into a mechanical ambush, and I came to Ripcord last year. I talked to a guy. He said, "Yeah, I was in your platoon." I couldn't remember him. And he says, "Yeah, remember we walked into a mechanical ambush?" And I said, "I can't remember it." I mean, you would think I would remember. Couldn't. Talked to Campbell later. Says, "Yeah, you guys walked into that mechanical ambush because we had to come back up the trail and get medevacs, and it's gone from my memory. Just gone."
Can you explain sort of what a mechanical ambush is?
Oh, well, I mean, that would be probably, it could be a captured claymore or something set up as a booby trap. So if you trip some, I mean, in today's world, it might be an IED or something like that, because that's vehicle-borne ambushes. But it's an ambush without people there.
Right. Okay. Well, what would differentiate it from just calling it a booby trap? Is it size?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. The term mechanical ambush, I mean, I hadn't heard that term in years. I would have called it a booby trap. I mean, we even tried our own tricks sometimes.
Mhm.
As far as enemy contact, there was really next to nothing. I think we found a trail watcher one time and fired him up, but no major stuff. I mean,
Right.
so, but really between then and the stand down, has anybody talked about the stand down that happened in early June of 1970? And really, I'd only been in the field for 2 weeks,
Mhm.
but that was important in the sense that I knew nobody else in 2506.
Mhm.
All the officers were back together. There was 3 or 4 days there where you actually got to see people from other companies and know who the other COs were. There's the famous officer's photo of all of us lined up,
Mhm.
in front of the control tower and, that type of thing. I didn't even know that picture existed till last year, till I came.
Okay. And so did you meet the battalion commander at that point, or?
Oh, I saw a lot. I mean, I saw a lot of the battalion. Spade was there all the time. I mean, he would descend in his helicopter, and I saw a lot of him. Sometimes I think I saw more of him than I did my own CO. Eventually, after Vasquez was replaced by Hewitt.
Mhm. All right. So you have the stand down, and so does Vasquez leave at that point?
No, he became S4
Okay.
of the battalion.
That's right.
And then Hewitt took over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Hewitt. And then how does Hewitt's command style compare with Vasquez's?
Oh, completely different. Vasquez was an old Special Forces guy. I mean, whoever wrote the book on him, I mean, they broke the mold on Vasquez. There is no better company commander. I mean, this guy is sly, cunning. He knew how to deal with things. Hewitt he looked like a kid. He was 24 years old, ROTC grad from University of Kansas. He extended his tour a year. He had been down south, I don't know, down by Saigon maybe. But the word was that he'd been with the Rough Puffs, which is Regional Forces, Popular Forces. And, life wasn't so bad down there. It was Viet Cong contact, totally different war. He might as well be fighting in some other country, And he just didn't have the experience. He slept in a hammock. That was crazy, So he was a decent guy,
Mhm. All right. And then does he he comes in while you're on that stand down. Is that
Yeah,
when he comes
he
in
took
and
over.
joins you? Okay. And then, well, what happens after that?
Well, eventually, after the stand down, we head back out to the field and start working. During the whole month of June, we worked that area around Ripcord. Not much in the way of contact. We just, occasional trail watch or something. Nothing really bad. I mean, I got some pictures. We fired up a trail watcher. And when I came over with Frank Bohr, somebody was telling me, yeah, remember the time we got that pay officer? And the guy must have been a pay guy because we got souvenirs. I got a piece of North Vietnamese money out of it, propaganda leaflet saying "GI go home," and some pictures of everybody gathered around this dead body. So, but that was right. Things were warming up. Things were just getting ready to hit because that was at the end of June, 1970.
All right. Now, so you're in the Ripcord area. Now, were you the first unit sent into Ripcord, or there's a place there where your company gets hit pretty hard? And
You're thinking about Hill 902?
Yeah. And where does that fit in the sequence?
July 2nd, 1970.
Okay. And can you tell us kind of what was going on at that point?
Still working the AO. Did anybody talk to you about an incident in Charlie Company where right at the end of June, we were working a ridge line, came to a stop, and we looked over at an adjacent ridge line, and there was a gap in there. There was no foliation. And we happened to see a North Vietnamese unit going on that ridge line, too far for us to shoot at. We counted maybe over 150 people, and I think that was sobering because we realized there was more of them than there were of us. Companies were operating at a very depleted strength. Platoon strength, I'm supposed to have 50 men in a platoon. I had 25.
And how strong was the company at that point, as far as you can tell?
Well, we'd been good under Vasquez. I don't know if we had slacked up any under Hewitt. I don't know. I mean, I was pretty new at this, so I knew Vasquez was good, but I couldn't tell you that Hewitt was bad.
I was actually just about numbers. But how large was the company at that point?
Well, there's 3 platoons, and let's say each platoon is reduced in strength to 25 men. So you got 75 men in the platoons, if that, and then maybe 5 guys in the company CP,
Right.
CO, FO from the 2nd of the 319.
Yeah, a couple RTOs and
A couple of RTOs because he had the secure set. So you got about 5 people. Oh,
Yeah.
medic, and so you got 5 people in the CP.
so about 80 or so.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're out there. You've seen all of these guys out there. You've seen the North Vietnamese in that position. So you realize that there are a lot of them out there.
Yeah. Everything's after the fact. We're up against umpty-umpty regiment, but
Yeah.
we didn't know
You
that.
don't know that at that time.
No.
Okay. Now, is it on the same patrol then that we get to July 2nd, or do you go back?
It was all one continuous thing, but there was some rotation in and out of Ripcord because the companies would, either put a company or part of a company on Ripcord for security. So,
Right.
so there, we had been on Ripcord, but before Ripcord got bad.
Right.
We were ordered on to July 1st. We went up on Hill 902 and spent the night there. Well-used place. There was foxholes already there and all that. Apparently, it was quite a little hotel between us and the North Vietnamese. I did not know that at the time, but it's just another denuded hill. And you can see Ripcord in the background. We're a couple of clicks away from Ripcord. So we're there one night, nothing special. And then somebody ordered us to stay there a second night. And I've had discussions with Frank Bohr, who rode over with me, under Vasquez, never stayed in the same place 2 nights in a row. In either under Vasquez or Hewlett. Now by this time, I've got maybe pushing 2 months in the field. Okay, this is May, June. I've never stayed in the same place 2 nights in a row, and we're told to stay here.
Now, before we get to go forward, as you were in those previous 2 months, as you're working through the jungle and so forth, had you ever been probed or attacked by enemy sappers or ground units?
No, not. The company had.
Yeah.
The company has. But me personally, no.
Okay.
No, just trail watchers, just little tiny stuff.
But it was the kind of thing where you could set up your perimeter at night and,
Yeah.
and they were not attacking you.
Right.
Okay, so what was going to happen then is going to be new.
Well, for me,
Yeah.
maybe not to the old hands, but for me it was
Yeah.
new.
Okay, so basically you're there a second night.
Right. So, and what had happened, and it turns out that that's when the big attack started on Ripcord. Right at that. I mean, apparently there was something magical in July 1st from the, I'm guessing, Ben Harrison could tell you better, you know, from the North Vietnam. July 1st must have been the start of all the action, because that's when Ripcord. So we're on 902. Down low, we can hear mortar tubes going off, and we know that they're mortaring Ripcord. So somebody, you know, it's always they, you know, S3, somebody on the battalion staff. Okay, we're ordered to stay there for the second night, and then somebody gets this great idea that they're going to drop in a pallet. They slung load a pallet of Laos in, which is a light anti-tank weapon, and it's a direct fire weapon. They say, okay, if you can hear the sound, shoot at the sound with the Laos. So we're sitting up there shooting at wherever we think the sound is, and then of course that irritated them, because then we start receiving incoming mortar rounds that are CS gas. And I've got pictures here of 90. There's a picture of me on 902 and some of the guys on 902. You can see the gas going off. You can see Ripcord in the background. And so, you know, they know we're there. And so then what we did is we dug in. There was positions already there. And so we dug in the positions that were already there, and strung up some wire that had tin cans and stuff, because we figured, oh man, this is inviting disaster by being here and so forth. And then and surely at 4 o'clock in the morning, that was the big attack on 902. So.
Well, did you have as much security set up as your resources allowed you to have?
Yeah, but could we have done it better? Yeah, way better. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a whole sore subject to me, because before going to this reunion, in my own isolation, because I did nothing until Jeff Wilcox and people encouraged me to do this. You know, I rethought that, because I was one of the few officers up there, and I'm responsible. There was a lot of people killed up there, so I have to take responsibility for a lot of that. So that condemns one to fight and refight the battle in your head over and over again. What if I had done this? What if we had not dug into the same holes? What, you know?
All right. So basically, from what you recall, what do you remember about what happened then that night when the attack started?
Started 4 in the morning. We heard movement. My platoon, there was 2 platoons in a company CP there. The 3rd platoon was back on Ripcord pulling security. They had just pulled them off that afternoon to go back to Ripcord and pull security. So they watched the whole thing from Ripcord. Got hit with a North Vietnamese sapper company. Good number of men. I don't know. Could be 100 men in that attack. I don't know. They just... We were well dug in. I mean, I was dug into a foxhole this deep. Had wood in front, dirt, had everything lined up, but the place just erupted in total explosion. Between satchel charges and RPGs, the place just got raked over pretty good. And if you did any shooting, but shooting back wasn't such a good thing, because that showed your position, and they were right on top of us with the satchel charges. So throwing grenades back at them was probably the more effective. So Hewitt was killed apparently after the fact. I realized immediately. What I thought, I was alert in my hole and on the radio with battalion trying to get air in and artillery. I mean, the artillery was pre-planned and all that. And we had an FO from the 2nd to the 319th. He was a first lieutenant, more senior than me. He'd been in the field for quite a while. And I never heard Hewitt, but I heard the FO. So sometime into it, I figured out that something had happened to Hewitt. And I debated, should I go to the CP or what? But the FO seemed, from what I could hear, had things under control. This is only by radio traffic. I don't know what's going on, because Hewitt's CP was I don't know, 25 meters behind mine. I mean, we were set up in a perimeter, and I had a machine gun right in front of me. I was back a little ways. First platoon facing one way, second platoon on the back, CP, let's say kind of at the crest of the hill. So, you know, I know things are not good at the CP. I thought we were in danger of being overrun, but then at daybreak, I thought, okay, we held. We didn't get overrun, because I don't know of anybody that came through my part of the line. But when I got back to the CP, found Hewitt dead and dead North Vietnamese all over the place, and I realized they had just come through the second platoon and just decimated them, you know.
So your own platoon, what kind of condition was it in?
Bunch of people wounded, but I had one man killed. The machine gunner was killed. That was the only guy. He must have taken an RPG or something.
Now, did you have a sense that maybe the enemy had figured out knew where the foxholes were when they went in? Or?
Yeah, I mean, but this is all after the fact.
Right.
But reading the book and all that, the book says we weren't dug in, but that's not true. We were dug in. But then, tactically speaking, it turns out, okay, 902 was a hotel. Everybody in the world had been there. Not only we had been there, but they had been there, so they knew where everything was.
Yeah.
So, and this is part of replaying the battle. Okay, we should have forgot those, moved further in and dug new holes. I mean, it just goes on infinitely. What could we have done better?
But ultimately, in the morning, the enemy's gone, and
yeah, they're gone.
And you're there. I mean, were there enemy bodies there too? I mean,
oh, everywhere.
Some of them?
Oh, all over the place. Oh, yeah. And unexploded satchel charges. I would bet, I don't know how many were thrown, but there was a bunch of them laying there that had not exploded. One of them, as an aside, one of them actually landed in my hole, in my foxhole. And me and my platoon sergeant, and we realized they had actually gotten it into the hole. So then it's those dreams where you're trying to crawl out of something and you can't move. Well, that's exactly, it seemed like it took 5 or 10 seconds to get out of the hole. And all this while I'm thinking, this thing's gonna go off, this thing's gonna go off. I'm thinking, okay, it goes off, I'm halfway out of the hole now, it means it'll blow my legs off or something like that. So then we actually get out of the hole. And we wait and we wait. So how long do you wait, waiting for it to go off? Meanwhile, the place is getting raked because the hole saved our, the foxhole saved our life. So we jump back in the hole, find it, throw it out, and go on. But that's what I mean. The place was a dud, and the place was littered with ones that didn't go off. But there was a lot that did.
All right. Now, so next morning comes, and so what do you do at that point once?
Well, we regroup, see what's going on. There was choppers in from Ripcord immediately, and this is where my memory is terrible, horrible. I would have told you that Jeff Wilcox was on the first chopper and took over the company. He did take over the company because I helped carry Hewitt's body to the helicopter, what was left of him. And I saw Jeff last year. He said, no, I was not. It was somebody else. I took over the company, regrouped and went back to Ripcord. The wounded went to Evans. I went back to Ripcord. I thought Jeff had taken the company over at 902, but he didn't. I was having severe hearing problems. I knew something was badly wrong with my ears. Couldn't hear. I was deaf at that point from everything. Right. So somebody said, well, go see the surgeon, see what's going on there. So I did. I went to the surgeon, and he looked at my ear and said, okay, you're bleeding from your eardrum. Something's happened there. We'll send you back to Charlie Mad, have you checked out. So I left the company at that point, went back to Evans, went to there was a whole bunch of guys from 902 in there at that point, and they looked at my ears and all that, and they said, well, we want to send you, we're going to send you back for further recovery to Cameron Bay. And that's a sore spot for me now, because it really accomplished nothing. All it did was bring back some of my hearing. Now, the hearing is pretty much toast. I have a history from my family of hearing problems. I've learned in recent years that there's a hereditary aspect. Once you damage, it just multiplies. Some people can withstand it and recover, but it's been a horrible downhill slope with my hearing. But being in Cameron Bay accomplished nothing. I missed the whole time that Jeff Wilcox was the commander of the company. They subsequently ended up on Hill 1000. I don't know if you've heard some stories of that. And I feel horrible about not being with them there on Hill 1000. And I was out of it for about 8-9 days and was able to get back to them at Firebase O'Reilly. But I joke with Jeff saying, you know, you must have stepped on the helicopter I stepped off of, because Lucas had relieved Jeff
Right.
of the company, and then I heard all the stories about it. So I rejoined the company, and then Lamb took over.
Right. Okay. So, and then basically, what does the company do? What are you doing then once you rejoin the company?
Well, we spent some time in O'Reilly, and then went back into the bush. There was never anything. There was some little fire 'em up here and there. Nothing on the magnitude of 902. Nothing that some of the other companies ran into. And in the last major engagement of Ripcord, there's people that can tell you the dates, but there was an incident where I think it was C Company, 1st of the 506, which was operating under the control of the 2nd Battalion of 506. The CO of that company was a guy named Workman, Captain Workman, and they ran into they just got decimated somehow. And they were trying to get all those guys out, and they shot down the helicopter on the pad. A bunch of guys killed. It was horrible. Workman, the blade came through and cut Workman in half. And those guys they had been messed up pretty bad. So we got orders to go in. That LZ was finished because it was littered with helicopters and stuff. So they were going to pull them out and put us in. Now, it turns out, I thought we were replacing them, but there was another company from the 501st. I didn't even realize that. But we went in, I didn't know whether it was a hot CA, everybody was shooting, the door guns were going off. I don't know if it was a hot one or not, but we got there, and God, the whole world was on this LZ. The guys, Workman's company was being pulled out on the ones that we went in on, and I don't know the date, but this was one of the last things with Ripcord. And they just started pulling people out of there. They pulled out first of the C Company, 1st of the 506. Turns out there were some 501 guys running around there. They pulled them out, and I thought we were under. My impression was we were to begin working the area. You know, they're gone, we're there, and all I can think of is this is really a bad place to be. I mean, but we were on an adjacent hill, and I was thinking it was a couple of 100 meters away, and then Campbell says, no, we were about 1,000 meters away, but those guys, you could tell they were pretty badly torn up. But there wasn't a whole bunch of us. We weren't really recovered from 902.
Yeah. And how many men are in your company at that point?
I don't know, but we had to be down to about nobody at that point. So they pulled all these guys out, and there we were. And then, so we thought, well, we should be walking off and starting patrol. At least that's what I thought the deal was. And then Lamb came back and said, no, it's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. We're supposed to be fooling the enemy into thinking that, and they're going to pull us out too. So we waited and waited. Those guys, two companies are already gone, so we're there. And then they start pulling us out, but they can only get one ship at a time in. And I'm thinking, this is probably one of the worst AOs ever, and we're going out 6 people at a time, because all you can get is like 6 guys in a slick, you know, because they can't carry any more than that. And I was on the last bird out, and this is where my memory totally broke down. I was on the last bird out. I had asked if I could set a couple of my idea was to blow some claymores as the bird came in, because I imagined they were just waiting out there just to finish us off, you know. That's what I thought would probably happen. But then they said, no, don't blow the claymores. You'll get the birds all spooked, the helicopters, you know. So we didn't blow them, and I was among the last. We were on the I was on the last bird out, just me and a couple guys. And but see, this is where my memory totally broke down. I thought it was still daylight, and Campbell said, no, it was dark when we pulled out. You know, horrible memory. I couldn't remember, because I was thinking it was still daylight when we, you know, getting dusk, but it was after dark. Because then there was a big discussion. Well, we had a strobe light. Somebody had left us a strobe light and all that, but But it's like not even remembering the mechanical ambush.
Mhm.
I could not remember that sucker for my life, you know?
All right. Now, how long then do you stay with the company after that?
Well, Ripcord ended.
I think about July 23rd or something.
Yeah, I was out there till mid-August. Lamb was the CO, and he just called me up and said, "Hey, you're going back to the rear. You're going to do a rear job." I was happy, you know. But so at that point, I don't know what was going on. I don't know. You know, Lamb could have been mad at me, or we had been getting some. We had gotten some fresh lieutenants, and there was a West Point class that sent some in.
Mm-hmm.
That was right before Ripcord, but some more officers started showing up. What happened to Jim Campbell? He went all those months in the field, but there was no officers showing up. So and he was good.
Mm-hmm.
So they left him in the field. You know, he was 6 months in the field, 6 months rear job. You know, but man, some of those guys got left out. But the poor enlisted guys, they were out there the whole 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I went back to brigade headquarters as liaison officer. Which was probably had to been one of the best jobs ever for a rear job, because I was the representative to the division of the 3rd Brigade.
Mm-hmm.
My job for the rest of my tour, and Jeff was back there.
Mm-hmm.
He was Harrison's briefer or something. But I worked out of the S3 shop for the S3 and the S2, but mainly the S3. So every morning I'd jump in a loach, and I would fly to every fire base, both 101st and 1st ARVN Division, in Tuatin Province. That's the name of it.
Okay.
Tuatin Province, in our area of operation, going all the way up towards the north.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would go in. I was the courier. I would take documents. Had a briefcase. I carried a tracing paper. I would trace the unit positions. You know, in the TOC, you've got a big topographical map, and there would be all the unit locations. So I would take tracing paper, trace all the units, put them in the briefcase, get back to brigade around noon, go down in the brigade TOC, post all the 2506 and whoever else was there, plus the ARVNs on the brigade TOC map. And then towards the end of the afternoon, I would go down to the division to Camp Eagle and attend the dog and pony show down there with the commanding general briefing, where you had a G2 and a G3 briefer in spit shine boots and starched fatigues briefing the commanding general and all the brass of the 101st. And if there was ever a question to be asked about 3rd Brigade, I had to be able to answer the question. But I also ended up posting to the division TOC all these 3rd Brigade locations. And in each brigade, each of the 3 brigades had their own liaison officer, and then go back to Evans in the evening. And that was the rest of my tour. And that's where Lamson 719 came in, because it got interesting, because I flew to all these different places, and since the 101st was kind of running Lamson 719, even though it was an ARVN show, that took me up to Quang Tri, I even saw the rock pile, and even saw Khe Sanh off in the distance one time. So.
All right, now explain a little bit what was going on with Lamson 719.
That was an incursion into Laos in the spring of 1970. The 1st ARVN Division sent troops into Laos. The
Spring of 71, isn't it?
71,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah. See, there you go, 71. April, something like that. General Sidney Berry, I believe, was the commanding. He was the assistant division commander, but he was detached, and there was a forward headquarters in Quang Tri of the 101st to run it. The 1st ARVN Division actually sent their assets into Laos. There was air support, from the 101st, Cobras, all that kind of stuff. No 101st units went into Laos, but Khe Sanh was opened back up again. And then, additionally, they brought the 1st of the 1st Cav from the Americal Division, from Chulai. They put them on LSTs, brought them up to, there's a ramp. There was a ramp at Tam Key, which there was an inlet there, not far from Hue and all that. They unloaded. This was a mechanized unit, so they had ACAVs, they had M113s, Sheridan tanks, and all that. And then they sent them up to Highway 9, and they ran from Highway 1 on Highway 9, which runs past the rock pile, Quezon, all the way over and goes on into Laos. And so, and then of course you have the 5th Mech was up on the DMZ. Now we're talking like next door, like right at the DMZ.
Right.
So the 5th Mech has already been here. That's a brigade of the 5th Infantry Division, which is a mechanized unit. They had 113s and they had M48 tanks.
So, and then basically you're having to kind of keep, were you kind of keeping track of various parts of that, or what?
Well, it's the same mission, except I got more places to go. I mentioned going to ARVN in 101st Fire Bases, but now you've got another TOC at up at Quang Tri, which was a forward operating TOC for the 101st. I ended up at Camp Carroll. There were some other locations where it became necessary for me to go in. It's basically doing the same thing, carrying documents back and forth, map overlays, noting troop locations, and what we would do by email today. I was thinking about that. Second of the 506 in Afghanistan. What I was carrying papers around doing, their email. When they were in Afghanistan, they're emailing each other. I mean, I saw some correspondence I wasn't supposed to be, where somebody turned up missing in the 2506, and there was an S1 chewing somebody out by email saying, "Where is this man? He's in a combat zone." That's today,
Right. Now, what impression did you have of the ARVN forces that you were working with?
1st ARVN Division was pretty good. They were really good. They could move. I didn't see that they were bad soldiers. And then there was the legendary Hawkbow, which is organic, which would be like a ranger company that belonged to the 1st. They operated on their own. They were a bunch of wild men. I remember at a division briefing at General Barry loved the Hawkbow. That was like his own personal ranger company. And they got involved in a shootout with the National Police in Hue, and the next thing you know, they'd show up over on the Laotian border somewhere. They got sent out there because they were bad boys in Hue, but they were good.
All right. Now, did you have much contact with Vietnamese, either military or civilian, aside from the ones that you saw?
The rumor was the whole country was off limits to the 101st. I really never saw much in the way of civilians, or except when we went to Eagle Beach and we drove through some countryside. And, I got to see Hue one time. Because I had to go by jeep from Eagle back to Evans. And then one time, Hewitt sent me on a mission. He sent me back and says, "Look, we got a prisoner down in Da Nang." The Marines ran the jail in Da Nang. And I had to go take some papers to some guy we had in the Huskow in Da Nang. And so he sent me back. I picked up a driver. Maybe it was Lamb. I forget who it was. But I picked up a driver back at Evans, strapped on a 45, and we drove down Highway 1 over the Hai Van Pass and down to Da Nang to go see this guy and serve papers on him and go back. But I was amazed at the beauty of the beaches and stuff, because Highway 1 followed right along the coastline, but that's the only time I ever got to see anything.
Now, when you were on the bases and so forth in the second half of your tour, were there Vietnamese civilians and things working there?
Oh yeah, you're right. The barber, there was an officers club and an NCO club, and the barmaid might be Vietnamese, but that was about the extent of any Vietnamese. I mean, really, I had unfortunately no contact with any, really.
Now, how did you, when you were out in the field, how would you sort of characterize the morale or the attitude of the soldiers you were serving with?
It could be discouraging at times. Nobody wanted to be the last man dead, killed. We knew the war was winding down. It was kind of like the whole idea was to stay alive. I wish I could tell you that we were a bunch of warriors that just lived for the moment, but a lot of them were draftees, Even my attitude got a little bit, I started seeing the futility of it. looking back on it, I have a totally different, I would go about it differently, but at the time I had this sense of futility and almost like, what's the point now? After so many people have been killed, and we walked off Ripcord and there's nothing left. Kind of hard to see what we were trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. How well did you think the soldiers performed individually, at least the ones that you were working with? Were they doing their jobs?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, there was the usual trying to keep a guy falling asleep on guard duty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that happens to this day, even in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
There's that, when you pull your watch, skills, I mean, some were better than others, but these were pretty good troops for a lot of, well, they were almost all draftees, you know.
Yeah, and of course you were with them at a certain point when you know they got cut up pretty badly, and when that happens to a unit, that can affect it for a while. And
Yeah.
you weren't with them too long after that. When you first joined the unit with Vasquez, was there a different quality to it than it had later?
I'm not sure. I don't think my memory is good enough to say, yeah, we were better then than we were then.
Okay. Now, when you were out in the field, you know, one of the sort of the stereotypes is that everybody's doing drugs and that kind of thing.
I never saw it.
Never saw it.
Mm-hmm.
When you were
Yeah, Evans, yeah, maybe, but no, not in the field.
Okay, now this tape is about up here, so I'm
Okay.
going to stop and reload. We're almost done. So we'll